This podcast is produced by the Harwood Productions Podcast Network. To learn more about the network and to find more of our shows, visit us online at www.harwoodpodcast.com.
Hi, I'm Cindy Harris, and today I'm baking a loaf of lemon buttermilk bread. This bread is great because it's so simple to put together, but it has incredible lemon flavor. It also holds up well day after day because the flavors continue to develop and it freezes beautifully. We're going to be baking this bread in a loaf pan, and there's a certain way I like to prepare my pan so that I can ensure that the bread comes out really easily. So I'm going to first start by getting a piece of parchment paper, and I'm going to fold it so that it's about the width of the pan. So it's not quite in half. I'm going to crease it with my hand real well, and then I'm just going to take a paring knife and I'm going to slice that right like that. Now this piece I'm going to save for another time. This will be the piece that I use in my pan. So next comes some baking spray. I'm going to take and spritz that on the inside. Then I'm going to lay my parchment sleeve right in the middle. Now when you're cutting your parchment, err on the side of it being too skinny, because if it fits too wide, it's not going to make an even bread. So err on the side of it being a little too skinny. That'll be fine. And then I'm just going to do one last quick spritz. And then I'm just going to leave this to the side while I get my batter ready. Now we're going to need to get the juice and the zest from a bunch of lemons, and I'm using Meyer lemons off my lemon tree today. If you have access to Meyer lemons, they're a great lemon for this bread because they have such great flavor. Well, I'm going to start by getting my microplaner, and I'm going to start zesting some lemons. I need to end up with 1 tablespoon, and it needs to be kind of a heaping tablespoon of lemon zest. Now today, for me to get my heaping tablespoon of zest, it took me 4 lemons, but it really depends on what size your lemons are. So for this recipe, I'd always make sure to get between 4 and 6 lemons. Now for our entire recipe, we're going to need 1/2 cup of lemon juice, 1/4 cup for the batter, and 1/4 cup for the glaze. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get all of the juice ready now. So I just have my 1 cup measuring cup, and I have a little strainer in the top, and I'm going to squeeze my lemons through it because many times, especially homegrown lemons, they have a lot of seeds in them, and we don't want that in our batter or our glaze. And then just to help release some of that juice, I'm using a reamer. Now for this bread, everything gets made in one bowl with just a spatula, and I love that. So I'm going to start by putting in my bowl 1 cup of sugar, 1/3 cup of melted butter, and 1/4 cup of my lemon juice. Now I'm actually going to measure it out into a 1/4 cup measuring cup, because if I accidentally pour too much out, then that's a problem. So this way I make sure to have just enough juice. Now with my spatula, I'm going to mix this together, and I want to see that sugar really mixing in with that juice in that butter. Then I have 2 eggs, and I'm going to add them one at a time, and with my spatula I'm going to mix those really well, and then once the first egg is mixed in, I'll add the second one. Now in a small bowl, I'm going to mix my dry ingredients together. So I have 1.5 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And then with my small whisk, I'm going to whisk that together, making sure the baking powder gets all throughout that flour. Now we're going to start putting everything together. I'm first going to start with my lemon zest. I'm going to put that in my bowl and mix that around. Lemon zest has a tendency to want to clump together, and I don't want that. So I'm going to take a moment and really stir that up well. Then I'm going to take my dry ingredients and I'm going to put about half of it in. Give that a quick stir. Then I have a half a cup of buttermilk and I'm going to add about half of that. Stir that up. Then I'm going to add the rest of my flour and the rest of my buttermilk. Then it's just a matter of stirring these ingredients together until the flour is totally mixed in and we don't see it at all. Now, as you mix up your batter, don't worry about it if it's not totally smooth. That's okay. But once that flour is totally dissipated, then we can go ahead and pour it right into our loaf pan. And then I'm just going to take my spatula, kind of smooth it out. It fills the pan about half full. So if you were using smaller loaf pans, just fill them about half full and you'll be in good shape. Then I'm going to take my loaf pan, I'm going to put it right in the center of a rimmed baking sheet. That way, just in case something were to bubble over, it would go right onto the tray. And I've got the oven preheated to 350 degrees, and this bread is going to bake for about an hour, and then at that point I'm going to test it with a skewer for doneness. Now my bread has just a few more minutes to bake in the oven, so I want to get my glaze finished off. So I have my 1/4 cup of lemon juice still left in my measuring cup. I'm going to measure out a half a cup of powdered sugar. I'm going to put that right into the lemon juice. And with a spoon, I'm going to start to dissolve that. Now, what I do when I'm dissolving powdered sugar in a liquid is I use my spoon and I kind of use the back of it and press that powdered sugar up against the side of the cup, and that way it kind of gets those lumps out. Now, as you can see, this is not a thick glaze at all, and it's not meant to be. It's meant to be absorbed by that warm bread, so we want it to be fairly thin. So my bread has just come out of the oven. It looks beautiful. I'm going to take a skewer this time, not a toothpick, because a toothpick wouldn't be quite long enough. I'm going to put it right in the center. Comes out totally clear, so this is done. Now I'm going to continue to use my skewer, and I'm just going to start poking holes all the way in through this bread. I know this seems harsh, but this is the best way to get the glaze into it. And once it's been poked lots of times, I'm going to take my glaze, I'm going to stir it just a little bit, and then I'm going to start spooning that all over the top of the bread. Now, as I pour this on, you're going to see it just soaks right in, and that's why we wanted it to be thin like it is. And you can even hear it sizzle just a little bit because that pan is still so hot. Now I'm going to let the bread sit here on the cooling rack for an hour, and that's going to let it have time to let all that glaze soak in, and then we can take it out of the pan. Now after about an hour, we can go ahead and get the bread out. We're going to first take a knife, and I'm just going to run it along the long sides just to make sure that it releases. Then I'll grab a hold of the sleeve and we'll just pop it out like that. Comes out beautifully. One of the great things about this bread is that the flavors will continue to develop over the next couple of days. So if you wanted to make this and serve it for a special occasion, you could actually make it a day or two in advance and it would taste fantastic. Well, if you want to give this lemon buttermilk bread a try at home, just go to our website and go to the Daily Bread show notes, and I'll have the recipe there for you. And as always, if you have any questions, please send me an email. I'll see you next time.